Tonight, public workers in Wisconsin are reacting to a major legal decision. A Dane County judge says big parts of Act 10 that place limits on unions are unconstitutional.
And joining us now to tell us what this all means moving forward is UWM Professor Emeritus Mordecai Lee. Mordecai, we had to bring you in for this decision. We all remember the protest. We remember some of the lawmakers fleeing the state over this very issue. What does today's decision mean?
It's sort of like running back the clock. In other words, this is like the day before Act 10 became a law. And so for union supporters, today is a huge victory. For supporters of Scott Walker and Republicans and conservatives, it's a big problem.
And this is coming again into the public conversation because of what happened on the Supreme Court in 2023 with the election of Judge Protasiewicz.
Kim, it's so interesting that the Supreme Court has become like the most important institution of state government. And so here we are, we're going into an election. In April, we're going to elect a replacement for one of the liberal justices. In other words, if the voters liked Act 10, they're going to vote for the de facto Republican. If the voters didn't like Act 10 and they're pro-union, they're going to vote for the liberal challenger. It's almost like the April election is going to be a referendum on Act 10 where there's no middle ground. It's like the abortion issue. There's no middle ground at all, no compromise.
This will be the issue. You think we're going to start seeing ads maybe sooner than later. This is what they'll be talking about.
If we thought the Protasiewicz election spent a lot of money, that was about
51 million.
Oh, it was 51?
Yeah,
I thought it was 45.
Yeah.
$51 million for a state Supreme Court race. I think it might be double that in April.
So if you are a teacher, what does this mean for you, this decision today?
If you're a teacher, that means that your union can be back in business. You've got union rights, you've got grievance rights, you've got a contract that protects individual workers.
We've lived with this for 13 years now. Let's remind people what this has done. What has the effect of Act 10 been on in Wisconsin?
You know, it was revolutionary because in Wisconsin it was considered acceptable for there to be unions for government workers, state workers, teachers, police, fire. And then all of a sudden, except for police and fire, it got rolled back. It disappeared. They had no rights, no contractual negotiations, no collective bargaining. So it was, in a sense, you might say, it became from a Democratic and liberal world, it became a Republican and conservative world, which has dominated Wisconsin politics since Scott Walker got elected.
I was going to say, really, when we started to hear Wisconsin as a purple state, because it had been reliably a blue state, Democratic, but when the unions started to fall apart, we saw a change in that.
You know, Scott Walker's election was a radical break from the past. And so it gave Republicans a chance, and we were in a moment of partisanship that was so extreme, and that's what brought on the lack of a compromise. That's what brought on the two extremes who would not talk to each other.
This has decimated the unions from where they were back 13 years ago. The unions in Wisconsin are not the same. They've lost a lot of power.
And across the country, because this kind of set the template for what happened in other states.
Right. In Wisconsin, WEA, the Wisconsin Teachers Association, was one of the major political players in Wisconsin politics and elections and in fundraising. And they just disappeared. And that's no surprise because Republicans were against unions, but they were delighted that the teachers union was no longer a political factor.
Now, there are people, teachers in Milwaukee, that still pay union dues, but that's if they want to.
Right. It's totally voluntary, and the union really didn't have very many rights. There was nothing it could negotiate about. But these are the union activists who want a union. Now it's really going to be up to the other teachers. Do they want themselves to be in a union?
Okay, so a big ruling today, but I think everybody agrees this is going to go to a higher court. The question is, when? When will this finally be cemented? We thought this might have been cemented a few years ago.
You know, there's one scenario where the state Supreme Court, with its present composition, takes the case. There's another scenario where the new justice, August 1st, sits, and then they take the case. And is the new justice going to be part of the current liberal majority, or is going to flip the majority back to the conservative majority? So the April election is everything when it comes to Act 10.
And we know Brad Schimmel from Waukesha County, Republican, running, and also Dane County Judge Susan Crawford. Those two names have been, already announced. We don't know who else is going to get in.
Right. Right now is the time when they're circulating nomination papers. In early January, then that'll be the cutoff. We'll know who's going to be on the ballot. I suspect those are going to be the two finalists. So you've got a Republican, a real former Republican, and you've got a de facto Democrat. It couldn't be cleaner than that.
So the ads start in January?
I think so. Okay. And for the voters, it's going to be so clear. Who do I prefer?
Well, we're going to save that seat. We're going to move it back and just bring it out for April. Mordecai Lee.
Or start a little office for Mordecai.
UW-M Professor Emeritus. Thank you, Mordecai, for coming in. Appreciate your time.